Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. Laura Myles from my workshop in Stockport in a very rainy Manchester this morning. Today is the first of a five-part series where we're going to be looking at DIY tasks around the home. I'm going to be showing you how to do them and hopefully some tips and tricks along the way. Hoping it will save you a little bit of money in the long run as well. So today we're going to be looking at tools. So tools can be quite overwhelming because there's loads of different types available, but actually for a basic DIY kit, you don't really need that much. So if you are watching at the moment and you've got any questions about any tools, drop them in the comments. I will try and answer them as we go through. If not, I'll drop on Facebook a bit later on and answer your questions. So, first thing that we're going to look at, which I'm sure is in 99% of people's houses, is the hammer. So there's loads of different types of hammers available. This one is called a claw hammer, purely because of this bit here. So you can see it looks like a claw. So we've got this flat end here, which is referred to as the head. So this is what we use to strike a nail in the wall, for example. And the claw is what you use to actually remove the nail when you need to take it out. You've got the entire length of the hammer here where you can hold it at any point. A lot of people hold it at the end and take a big whack and then you're actually bending the nail. So what we want to do to try and be a little bit more accurate is try and hold it as close to the head as possible. You won't necessarily get the power, but you will actually get the accuracy so you can make sure it goes in nice and straight. The other useful thing we can use for the hammer is, sure, none of you have got a crowbar lying around the house, but if you were ever to take any tiles off the wall, for example, you would strike the tile with the head, and then you can use the claw to leave the tiles off the wall. So it's quite a good tool to have. Those of you that have maybe got little ones and they might want to help you with DIY, you can actually get a safe hammer, which looks like this. So again, it's got the head, but it's got this ball edge, which hopefully will protect their faces from hitting themselves. So next up, we've got these. They are not tweezers, as a lot of the kids call them. I'm sure you can try and get your eyebrows out with them. There are loads of different types of pliers around. This one is called a combination plier. So it's essentially a combination of all the different pliers you can get. And there's loads of different things you can use this for. One of the most common ones is people use it to take wall plugs out of the wall. I'm going to be showing you some other ways to use them as well. Next up, we have one of these. So it's always useful to have a blade in case you need to get any packaging or anything like that. Most people have heard of Stanley. Stanley is the brand. The actual item itself is a knife. So a Stanley knife will actually set you back £6 or £7, and then you need to buy a new blade to replace that. This one here is called a snap-off blade knife. I'm going to try and show you. There are some sort of diagonal lines, I don't know if you can see there. And the idea is when it gets blunt, snap this top bit off, and then you've got the rest of the blade, so it keeps nice and sharp. You can normally get these £3 for £1 shop, so they're actually really cost effective. The difficulty bit though is actually snapping the blade off. So at the end, this little black thing here, there is a slot, and the idea is that you're supposed to slot that in the blade and snap off. But if you don't take your own eye out, you'll take someone else's eye out. So what we can do is we use our pliers and we hold the pliers along the diagonal of the blade and then snap it. We've got our snapped blade, and nice and safely we're holding on to the one that we've snapped off as well. So really useful hack for your pliers. Next up, we have one of these. Hopefully you all recognise these. This is a tape measure. I don't know if there's any old school people watching that's still using feet and inches. It does still have inches on there, and it also has centimetres and millimetres. So what you'll probably find in DIY is that most people now will use centimetres and millimetres, and the reason is really because it's a smaller measurement, it means that we can be a lot more accurate with measurements that we're taking. If you are still going with inches and feet, you can have a look online, and there are some conversion calculators. So if you just search for convert inches to centimetres, it will come up on Google, put the relevant measurement in, and it will be equivalent. So you don't need to try and look it up. The other thing about the tape measure is it is usually retractable, so you end up wrestling with it, which is not easy. They should have what I call a stopper, which is this button here. So once you've pulled it out as far as you need to, you press your stopper, it then holds it in place. And if you really want to look apart, there is usually a little clip for your belt on the back as well. There are some people that have been on my DIY courses, and they're not joiners, they're not carpenters, they continually have a tape measure strapped to them. So in a measuring emergency, that is the dash you want to go to. So next up, we have one of these. So this is a spirit level, and essentially we use this to make sure that something is either horizontally straight or vertically straight. And the way that it works, come a bit closer, you can see, if you can see that bubble in the glass there, the idea is that the bubble sits in between those two black lines, and that will tell you whether something is straight or not. A few things to bear in mind with the spirit level. We want to be spending a little bit of money on this, so I wouldn't advise going to the pound shop and paying a few quid for it. Something for this size, so it's about 50 centimetres, you want to be looking at about £10. And the other giveaway is the actual weight, so you can visibly feel the weight of this one compared to the cheaper one. A few things to look out for is the size of the bubbles. You can see on this bubble here, it's quite big and it almost touches the black lines. I then show you my cheap and cheerful one, which is this one here. You can see that the bubble, hopefully you'll be able to see that, is actually really, really small. Now, what this means is there's a degree of inaccuracy, because I might think something is more central than you. I'm going to hold them together so you can see that. So whenever there is room for interpretation, it means that there is room for inaccuracy when something is actually straight. The other thing as well is we take for granted that these spirit levels are accurate. So we buy them from the shop, we don't do any tests on them, and we use them at home. There is a little test that you can do. So I'll try and explain this, it's a little bit of a tricky one. There are actually two ways that you can take a measurement from the spirit level. The first way is on this side here. So you can see this particular side has got a ruler, but I could take it from this side here. So the idea is if you're up a ladder, you don't want to be checking that you're using the same side all the time. You grab your spirit level and you should be able to put it that way or that way. If both sides are giving you a different reading, it's not an accurate spirit level. So if one is telling you it's only slightly to the right and the other one's telling you it's a lot to the right, get rid. It's time to get a new spirit level. Other things that you can use, you can get something called a laser level, which is really useful if you're doing tiling. You basically set the laser up. It's usually self-leveling as well. So you can set the laser up and then continue to work while it's in place. And for those of you who've got a mobile phone, you can actually get a spirit level app. Again, double check it with a normal spirit level. You don't want to be using phone spirit level, it's not accurate. So on to the bits now that I think are probably going to blow your mind a little bit. So I say this all the time on the workshops I teach in person. When we're putting something on the wall, there are 3 stages. It's hole, plug, screw. The first thing we need to do is make the hole. Then we need to put some sort of plug in there to do screws or some grip. And then obviously finally we're going to screw it in. So first thing, we need something to make a hole with. And what we've got here are some drill bits. And there are different drill bits for different materials. So the first thing we need to make sure is that we're using the right drill bit for the right material. So if you can see, the difference between the two. So we've got this black one here, it's got a sharp point, and we've got this silver one that's kind of got a bit of a spaded head. So this is the first point where DIY starts to go wrong to using the drill bit. Easiest way to remember it is wood is a naturally cracking material. So we don't actually need to use the wall plug. But what we do need to do is prepare the wood before we screw into it. So that's when it's likely to flake and break. So before we actually screw into wood, we need to do what's called a pilot hole. And that essentially just prepares the fibres in the wood for the screw to go in. The drill bit is exactly the same. So this is a wood drill bit, and this point here is essentially a pilot hole for the drill bit. So always remember, spiky is wood, and the spade is for what we call masonry, which essentially is just brickwork. So usually the outside walls of your house will always be brick. So we've made our hole. Next thing we need to do is use a plug. Now there's different sorts of wall plugs available. Hopefully this is going to come across on camera. My Manc accent always sounds very, very similar. So most people have heard of rawl plug, RAWL. This is actually the brand, it's not actually the item. So if you were to search on, say, B&Q's website and you searched for rawl plug, you would get less results than if you search for wall plug. It's a bit like the Hoover vacuum thing. So we always want to be referring to them as wall plugs. And I've got two wall plugs here. So again, I'll bring them close so you can see. So we've got one that's got a very sort of smooth flat edge, and we've got one that almost looks a bit like a screw. So I always ask people which is which, and 50% get it wrong. So again, we've chosen the wrong drill bit and might choose the wrong wall plug. So this red one here is for brick or masonry, and the colours are universal, or should be, across all shops. So hopefully all the red ones will be the same size. There's brown ones, yellow ones, blue ones, and you'll probably find that the DIY tasks that you're most likely to do will be using the same wall plug all the time. So you'll get used to the sort of size that you're using. This one here is plasterboard wall plug. So a lot of people think this might be for masonry. All that would happen is it would just snap inside the brick. So the reason we want to make sure we're using the right plug, the right sort of material, is the amount of grip that it's going to give us. So if we're using a plasterboard wall as an example, so for those that don't know what a plasterboard wall is, it's also referred to as a stud wall. So it's a wooden frame with what are called studs, which are vertical battens in between, and then plasterboard is almost stuck on top. It's a bit like cardboard essentially. So between the wooden battens, there is nothing. It's absolutely hollow. So if we look at the masonry wall plug, if we actually put the masonry wall plug in there, once you've got past the little bit of plasterboard, there's absolutely nothing for this to grip onto. And so when you put something up and there's any weight applied to the wall plug, it just slips out. If we use the plasterboard wall plug, you can see it almost looks like a screw. This actually clamps to plasterboard, and that's what gives it strength. So a lot of people wonder if you can put heavy TV screens on the plasterboard wall. You can, but very importantly, what you need to do is find the stud in the wall, and one of the fixings must go in the stud. So we already know that wood is a naturally fibre. It's the strongest part of the stud wall. So if we get one bracket in the stud and the other bracket we can use those plasterboard wall plugs, that will give us the strength to be able to put TV on the wall. If you're worried, get a handyman. Hopefully they should be using the right wall plugs. So we've got our hole, we've got our plug, and this is the bit that really will be life-changing, someone once said. So there's loads of different types of screw head, but there's only actually 3 that we're going to be using on a regular basis. So people kind of raise their eyebrows when they hear 3. They're aware of 2, but not necessarily the third one. So the first one is a flathead or a slot head. I don't have one of those screws with me, but I do have the corresponding screwdriver. So you can see there, it's just a flat, straight head. And then we've got these other two. So I'm going to hold these up to the screen. I have doodled a picture if you can't see the detail. So these both probably look like Phillips or crossheads. They've both definitely got that. But one of them is actually called Pozi, P-O-Z-I. So I'm going to get the picture, I'm not sure if you saw that. Okay, so we've got these two. So everyone's familiar with this one, which is the Phillips or the crosshead. And this is the one where people trip up. So you can see you've both got cross, but these have got extra lines in between. And what happens if you use the wrong screwdriver for the wrong screw head, we end up what's called stripping the screw head, which is an absolute nightmare. You can't get the screw in, you can't take it out. So for those that aren't sure what it looks like, again, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this, you end up losing the indentation and you end up with just a horrible circle. So we definitely want to make sure that we're using the right screwdriver, the right screw. But what do the screwdrivers look like? Again, very subtle difference. So I'll hold these up to the camera, I don't think you can see that. So in between the main cross on this longer one here, we should see an extra sort of triangular bit. You can see that. So this is the Pozi, and those extra triangular bits are what fit in the extra lines between the main cross. One question I get asked is, can you use a Phillips screwdriver on both? Yes, you can. They both have the cross. But I prefer people to use the actual right screwdriver, the actual screw head, because the last thing you want to do is get confused, end up using a Pozi screwdriver on a Phillips head, and you end up with a horrible circle, and it's a bit of a nightmare from then. So 3 main types of screws, not 2. What I'd like you to do after the session is go around your house, have a look at what sort of screws that you can see. Probably 90% are going to be Pozi, they're the more modern one. And again, go into your toolbox, have a look at what screwdrivers you've got. A lot of people will only have a Phillips screwdriver. It's okay, but it's not going to give the grip you need if you've got a Pozi screwdriver. So other questions I get asked when I do DIY is, how do you know what size drill bit to use for which wall plug? How do you know what screws fit in which wall plug? Oh, I think I might have a question. Okay, so I'm not sure if you heard that. It was about which drill bit to use if you've got really, really hard walls. I'm going to cover that a little bit later on when we look at the sort of drills you can use. So, back to how you know which size to use. This packet here, I don't think that's the front actually, no. You can get these packs here, which give you not only the wall plugs, but it also gives you the right size screw for those wall plugs as well. And even better than that, actually tells you which size drill bit to use as well. So the millimeters are literally just referring to the width of the actual drill bit. But let's say, for example, you've got a toolbox full of stuff already. It's just a case of matching it up. So if I grab my wall plug and I hold it behind the drill bit, we can see that they are pretty much the same size. So that is the drill bit that I would be going for that particular wall plug. For the screw, we obviously want the screw to go inside the wall plug. So I tell people, actually get the screw and have a go at screwing it in. If it doesn't go in, the screw's too big. If it slides in and out, the screw's too small. So sometimes it's literally just getting hold of these things and seeing how they all fit together. If you're unsure, always better to go with a smaller drill bit first, because you can always make the hole bigger. If your hole's too big, I'm going to be showing you in some of the other sessions how you can actually fix that so you can still fix or plug into it. So, onto the biggie now, which is the drill. There are loads of different types of drill available. I recommend one of these, which is called a combi drill, and it's a combination essentially of a screwdriver and what's called a hammer drill, which I'll mention in a sec. So this is what they look like. They are usually battery operated, and I'm just going to run through some of the features of the combi. So the first thing is this button here, which is referred to as the trigger. So when you press it, this is what actually turns the motor around. Within that, there is a speed function. So the lighter you press it, the slower it will go. The harder you press it, the faster it will. So another cause of what's called a strict screw head is using either too much speed or too much power. So you'll find very, very lightly, almost kind of like little triggers, usually actually does the job when you're screwing something in. So next, we've got this little button here, which is on both sides, and this is the directional button. So if I turn it that way at the moment, you can see which way it's turning, and if I press it the other way, it's now turning in the direction. So one thing people always ask is which direction should turn something, screwing something in. There's two different ways to remember. One is clockwise, so if you're screwing something in, we should be turning it clockwise. The other, the old school, is righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So I would advise pick one and try and remember that one. Next up, we've got this function here. Not all combis have this. This is a power function, and basically it's on 2 at the moment. If I press it down, it goes to 1. 2 is the highest, 1 is the lowest. I've always kept it on 2. I've never had any reason to change it. Next is this bit here. So you can see these numbers. I'm going to spin around. This is referred to as torque, T-O-R-Q-U-E, and essentially it's just the power, but power, rather than going forward, it's the circular power. All you need to know is the lower the number, the lower the power, higher the number, the higher the power. So at the moment, you can see that it's a little triangle here and 1, so we're on 1 at the moment. So if I turn it all the way around to 18, that's on the most powerful. The next function is this one here. So I don't know if you can see that. So that is basically the drill function. So if you're going into wood or something like that. And then the last thing is what makes this a combi drill. So if it doesn't have this function, chances are probably a bit of a 4 or 5 screwdriver. So the last function is this. So people say, oh, it's a T. It's actually a picture of a hammer. So this has got a hammer function, and it replicates functionality of a hammer drill. So when you're looking for a combi, I would always advise making sure that you've got that icon. If you don't, it's just a screwdriver. So last but not least, we need to know where we're going to put our drill bits or our screw bits. So it's this end bit here, which is referred to as the chuck. So as I'm spinning it, you'll see those metal pins going further apart. Spin it the other way, they go closer together. So get your drill bit. You've got a flat bit here and then a kind of curly end bit. The flat bit is what goes in the drill. It goes in like that, you can see. And then I use the chuck to tighten it and make sure that it's held in place. So we're going to be covering a lot more about the drill in the next sessions when I'm going to be demoing how to do things. But that's just a basic outline of the functions of it. So I said I was going to mention the hammer drill. So the question before about if you've got really, really tough bricks, chances are you're going to actually need a hammer drill. And a hammer drill is usually corded and it looks quite meaty compared to the common drill. So sometimes it can have 2 handles, it's always corded, and you know that it's pretty powerful because the chuck on this one actually needs a special key, so it's not one that you can actually tighten by hand. So it's not necessarily the drill bit itself, it's the actual drill that you use it that will help you. Technique can also really affect how successful you are going into brick. So a lot of people think it should be really, really easy. If you've got really tough brick, it does take some time. And again, we're going to be looking at technique in some of the other sessions, but essentially the drill will only do so much. We need to put our own power behind it as well. So Have we got any other questions? Dry-lined walls, which I think are, I might be wrong, I think they are the same as plasterboard walls. So make sure you're using plasterboard wall plug. In terms of the drill bit, I would go for the masonry drill bit. So the wood one should only be ever used for wood. What we don't want to do is actually blunt that point. So dry-line walls, I might be wrong, I think they are plasterboard walls. So we should essentially be using plasterboard wall plug. Low setting on the drill, doesn't take that much to open the plasterboard. And I think that's it. Any more questions? No. If you watch this back and you do have any more, please drop them in the comments. I will come and answer them. The next session we are going to be looking at putting up shelves. So we're going to be looking at different sorts of shelving, and I'm going to be showing you not necessarily the quickest technique, but the best technique that you can use and apply to everything, and you can do it on your own flowers. I think I'm back next Thursday afternoon, so hopefully I will see you then, and thank you for joining me today.